So thank you all again so much for joining us today for NHA's webinar on 6 ways that you can help students to pass the NHA certification exam. We are really excited to be here. Just so you know, here at NHA, we are fully invested in the success for you and your learners. We're here to help ensure that everyone, no matter their background or needs, feels confident and empowered to challenge that certification exam at the end of their program. Now, we know that confidence is a huge part of that process. So today's goals are to ensure that you have everything you need to help them excel. But before we get started, I wanted to take a quick minute and just see who we had with us here today. I'm going to post a poll up on your screen. You should see. We just want to know kind of what your general role is with your institution. So take a look at the options there in that poll and select the one that most closely aligns to your general role. If you have something that falls in an other category, feel free to post that in the chat box. We're just trying to see in general kind of who we have with us today. So take a quick minute and fill that out for us. Oops, I didn't mean to move back on my slide. There we go. All right, so, okay, great. Everybody has posted, and it looks like the majority of people here are actually classroom educators. Wonderful. 85% of you on with us today are classroom educators. Got a couple others there. So thank you so much for filling that out. It does give us a little bit of information around the kind of role and what we're going to be covering with you. So let's take a minute now to understand a little bit more about the NHA in general. So now, I'm sure you're aware, we provide frontline healthcare worker certifications and learning resources for healthcare certifications and studying for every step of this journey. There are 8 nationally accredited certifications and aligned study materials, as well as additional educational tools that address didactic content. We have reporting, analytics, soft skills developers. So to talk a little bit about the certifications, 5 of those 8 certifications do fall within the practitioner side of frontline healthcare. And these include medical assistant, phlebotomist, pharmacy technician, EKG, and patient care technician. In addition, we have 3 certifications in a more administrative side, which include billing and coding, medical administrative assistant, and e-health records. As I mentioned, NHA does develop comprehensive learning tools that focus on the key objectives for the healthcare professions that we serve. Now, today's webinar, however, is really directed towards you as an educator, and we're going to focus primarily on preparing for those exam resources, right? What does it take to get all the way through to that certification test? Now, NHA has been working on full program maps to help with implementing this entire suite of possible resources, no matter which profession you are teaching towards. But today, we are going to focus primarily again on exam day and certification, just that kind of final phase of that learning. Here's a real simplified timeline, and this is going to be our roadmap for our discussion today. So we'll be referencing this several times. So we'll use that to go through steps that will outline on best practices to help your students pass the exam. But ultimately, we know that the building blocks of their success include you as their instructors. You are the vital piece of this process. Your involvement and encouragement really can shape their ability to achieve that goal of earning their industry certification. So as we go through our steps, we're going to be outlining when and how we would suggest you address these processes, which truly can make all of the difference. Okay, so the first tip that you could do to help your students have a successful exam experience is to start planning early. We know getting a head start is always a good idea. With that in mind, prior to the start of a term, it's a best practice to check to be sure everything is ready to go. If you are providing the NHA exam prep materials to your students, check in your NHA account under an inventory feature, which we're going to look at. This allows you to ensure that you have all the materials and resources already loaded. If not, connect with your NHA representative to finalize or approve an order request. When everything is set up, this is the right time to establish your NHA course on the platform. Take some time to review the additional materials that NHA has around this process, how-to PDFs, video walkthroughs that are available in your administrative login. Remember to fill out that course form we were talking about before. You fill that out for that's the one for the $500 gift card, and we can try to bring you some reminders and resources when you need them. If you need or want any one-on-one refresher training for best practices for the materials, or if you're using a new resource with NHA this year, this is the right time to get that scheduled through your NHA contact, and they'll set you up with one of our team, the client experience partners, privileged to be a part of that group. And then we'll be able to do a one-on-one session on whatever that content is. So this is the idea, but let's walk through what it really looks like for you. So to start, you'll need to log in to your administrative account with NHA at nhanow.com. Now, if you don't have one or don't know if you have one, again, fill out that contact form, that one that we'll post at the end, and you'll be able to put your information there and you will be connected with ASAP. Once you've logged in, select the inventory option on the left side of your page. This will let you confirm what you already have in your institution account. So you'll be able to see what is not yet been provided to your students. If what you see here isn't sufficient for your cohort, well, then you'll want to follow your proper institution steps, connect with your NHA contact to get more added. This is best to do before you begin. Definitely before you add students to a course. This ensures that everyone has access to everything and you can be all ready for your classes to begin. Now, to create a course to implement these materials, you can now select the courses feature. So we were just on inventory. Now we're going to move into courses. Before creating a new course, now is the time to archive any old or finished courses from the previous term. To do this, open that existing course in their course details button and choose to archive that course right at the top. Now, this will not revoke access from those learners who studied in that previous term. It just turns off the ability to add a new candidate to that course to help prevent confusion and keep your reporting clean. So once that's done, now it's time to select a new course feature. Here from that same spaces under courses, you select new course and you can begin to create your NHA course, selecting the materials you want to provide access to, filling in any appropriate information, setting any boundaries or parameters you would like for implementing this material. The other part of preparing ahead we mentioned is to make sure that you are ready to implement any necessary steps for the program. So this may include revisiting or reviewing the additional learning tools and resources on the NHA website, including how to document walkthroughs and videos on the entire journey for both you and your students. Look over the candidate-facing videos available, see what it looks like from their perspective. And if you do want any additional training or if you're rolling out a new contact, right, let us know, connect with your NHA representative, and one of us from the client experience team will follow up with you ASAP. Okay, now that you're ready to go, the next step is to get your learners ready by getting them set up with their personal NHA accounts. Based off the data that we have, NHA has been able to collect that research is showing not only are those students who start their journey with NHA earlier more confident in their readiness, but also have a higher likelihood not just to take the NHA exam, but pass that exam. We see that those students who are given this kind of confidence have a higher probability of getting all the way through. So inviting your students to create that account as early in the program as is realistic, even if you're not yet starting the exact exam prep materials yet, just getting them set up can possibly begin to familiarize them with the platform, tools, and resources available to them. In addition, once they have their NHA logins, NHA will start to send them additional suggestions, pieces of encouragement, resources as they mentally prepare for the road ahead. So as soon as possible, have your students set up those logins. And there's a couple of best practices here. We do recommend that their NHA login be an email address that not only they will check frequently, but also after they're completed with your program, one they will continue to access as they progress forward. Think about, where would you like a reset password email to go? Or what email address will you have on your resume? This starting point is a great time to begin the conversation on digital professionalism. Maybe even use setting up a professional online presence with an email. If you do LinkedIn accounts or that NHA login on our website, these are all parts of that journey. They should also take note of the password that they use. No one wants to be stuck in an exam room at the end of their program and unable to take their test due to a forgotten password. The other best practice here is to confirm that the name that they use for their candidate account is their legal first and last name, whatever is on their government issued photo ID. This is what will be used on exam day to verify their identity. And if the account name doesn't match, they may not be allowed to test. And you can't set these up for them, but you can monitor this to be sure that everything follows these best practices. So if you invite your learners to create their own accounts early in a term prior to accessing course content, there's an invitation feature directly on your NHA navigation bar. This is a best practice, again, a recommendation, so they can begin to get those resources from NHA. When it's time, you can add them to your course roster, providing them some of that inventory that we checked already. We recommend starting this content again as early as is realistic in your program. It helps to align what they're learning with that end exam, to establish their growth mindset that they can do this. It also promotes a higher dedication to the belief that they have the ability to see this all the way through to the end. In fact, a recent survey of over 6,000 exam candidates stated that they wished they had studied with NHA's exam prep materials earlier and more frequently than they did prior to sitting for the exam. This really speaks to their level of confidence in the exam format and content. Now, this takes us to step 3, implementing the NHA exam study resources into your program. We highly recommend providing access to these materials as early as possible, but step 3 really includes 3 main components: implementing the study guide and quizzes, practice tests and review resources, and using the detailed reporting tools. Now I'm going to take just a quick minute and I'm going to ask another question here in a poll. So of those who are with us today, how many of you are currently use or planning in the term to use the NHA study materials in your classroom? Just take a quick minute, fill that out. Just kind of wanting to know where we are. Wonderful. Take just a minute. Got almost everybody here. Couple of stragglers. That's okay. We're going to go ahead and close up this here in just a second. All right. Thank you, guys. So it looks like that we have, again, almost everybody is either using it currently or planning to use it. With just a few, this might be relatively new to, but primarily most of the people here are either going to or currently using that material, which is great news. We're going to be talking a lot about this here as we move into the next few sections. So a little bit of background on these materials, best practices, for example. Over the last decade, we've been able to award over 1 million certifications across the country. We use that data and content from those processes to help you understand some best practices on implementation. We're constantly evaluating candidate behavior in preparation compared to exam outcomes on the certification itself. We're able to provide some pretty strong analytics to assist with this process. We have seen that across the country, those who use the NHA certification resources and best practices with studying, along with your program course content, have a much higher possibility in passing the exam in their first attempt. So moving through step 3, we highly recommend providing access to these materials as early as possible, aligning your students' learning to that NHA exam test plan. This begins with the online study guide and quizzes that you can embed throughout your academic program. Use these module-based quizzes to evaluate candidate readiness. Since these follow the test outline, each quiz can provide clarity to how your students are mastering the topics as they learn them. This also gives your students insight into the NHA process, how we word questions and answers, and can already begin to instill some confidence in their ability to pass the NHA exam. So this is working through that material. Now, we know that engagement in learning is not a new idea to NHA or education in general. Involving several different techniques and practices in your educational program can really help, not only with involvement, but a higher feeling of satisfaction in the learning process. All of these items listed here have been identified by a really great article published by Inside Higher Ed as strategies that, when used, promote feelings of confidence and satisfaction in learning. Just a little bit of creativity in your program development, NHA's exam prep materials can accomplish almost every one of the items on this list. Let's take a look at what those study guides and quizzes really contain. So all of the NHA study guides online resources are aligned directly to the test plan for that exam. They also include some key components. Depending on the type, the certification type, it can look a little bit different, but resources include audio readers, quizzes, personal checkpoints, detailed reporting on time spent and outcomes. All assessments or questions provide rationales to students directly to understand more about how NHA words those questions and see some of the normatives behind the answers. Different certification resources may provide case studies, games, flashcards, professionalism videos, or even EMR challenges. Also, we recently launched, we're very excited, a flashcard app to help with learning. So once you have provided access to those materials to your students, they can then download this app using the login from their NHA account. It will take them through flashcards to have access to anything that they've been provided through those study materials. So it gives them an additional way to kind of promote that mobile capacity. They can easily download this for Android or Apple. There are how-tos out on our website that walk through how to do this from every type of device. So this is another tool. Once they're logged in, they should then download this to help promote some further study processes. Now you have access to view all of these materials through your NHA website in a preview feature. So you don't need to download that app. You've got access to everything that they have access to right from here. So you can select any module when applicable to review for your own benefit. As I mentioned, the quizzes tied to each section are designed to look and feel just like the online exam, but are focused in just one core competency. So you can see that level of mastery at a topic level. As I mentioned, these questions won't just tell students if they're wrong or right, but provide the background information needed to know to understand why each choice is right or wrong, which is designed to help with familiarity and comfort, especially related to test anxiety. Now, we don't recommend that they take these quizzes over and over again just to get a high score. We're sort of giving them the answers as they go. So instead, we would suggest you take these quizzes and use that information on what to identify is needed for study before moving into the next module. You also have certification-specific implementation guides available to you. These outline for you the content, implementation suggestions, even the average time it can take for learners to navigate through the materials. Here's a snapshot of just 4 of our 8 certifications and the time we would suggest the average candidate take to work through each. And it can vary depending on the certification. Here's an example of how we outline not only per certification, but also per module to help with the implementation and setting expectations for your students. The next portion of step 3 are those practice tests and review resources. So the study material package includes a series of practice assessments designed to look and feel just like the exam. They follow the full test plan which is why implementing these too soon in the learning cycle may not be in the best interest of students. Unlike the module quizzes, these have a limit on the attempts available. Each practice assessment also has what's called a focused review tied to it after completion. This is a personalized study tool to help each candidate as they navigate through these resources. So, when we monitor student behaviors with practice tests, again, these should really be used after the study guide has been completed. Now, this is the same for all of our resources except for the billing and coding exam. If you're doing the billing and coding, they actually have a baseline assessment that you can use prior to the study guide. At present, this is the only one of our products that recommends that for implementation, but either way, NHA has seen that the first practice exam should be as close to a real exam experience as possible for your learners. Some of our materials will automatically do this, but you can also set this manually as well. After that first test, use the reporting and data to help define your remediation plan for your students, moving through the next few practice tests, leveraging that unique focused review tool provided directly to learners, tied to each attempt to further their study, along with other course materials that you provide. Once you've issued that third practice test, we then suggest the fourth exam be again in that more real exam environment if possible. So this not only provides your learners with a real world experience of the actual exam, but helps to develop their skills related to test taking and test anxiety. We have seen that those who have at least two practice tests in this kind of mock exam experience have a higher probability of success on their NHA exams. So the practice tests, as I mentioned, are designed to look and feel just like the test. No matter which certification you're taking or providing, they are taken through at least 3 different test versions and will cycle through a total of 6 possible test attempts. Now, just because they get a bunch of tries doesn't mean we would suggest they just take them all the way right at first to memorize questions. These are designed to help prepare and study for the exam. Each of those attempts is the full test plan. But learners should not expect that these exact questions will be on the actual certification test. They are designed to follow the plan outline for all scored questions and provide feedback, reporting, additional tools to help them study. Now, you have the power as the instructor to turn on or off instant feedback rationales to help as they prepare. This is what you could do for that first and fourth exam attempt to help give them that real experience. Even if possible, have them in a testing center or require a time limit for those tests. It's not necessarily important that they use all 6 assessments, but that they study in between. And one of the ways we can help with that is again talking about that focused review, that personalized study tool. So after each practice assessment, they receive a personalized score report. They get a little mini one of these with each quiz as well that shows them not what question they missed, but what competencies they missed questions on. This is to be sure that they go back and study on the areas that need work rather than just memorize questions or continue working in areas they're already confident. And after each practice test, they can immediately launch their focused review. This helps them study what may still need some help, right? We want them to spend time in review as well as in your course curriculum in between each practice test attempt. So this is a different tool specific to each learner and each attempt to help them focus further in those areas that they may still be struggling in. It's printable. It's filterable. It helps to make sure that students are doing more study, right? We don't want them to focus on things that are easy. The best way to improve their score is to work on the information they haven't mastered yet. And this helps to filter that down to that kind of core piece. Now, we know much of implementation through the learning process also includes understanding what they've been doing, where are they doing it, reporting and analytics that are available through these materials. So from the very first moment, the very first learner accesses the study content, detailed reports will begin to load. They give you and your students visibility to content accessed, time spent, quizzes completed, practice test outcomes. Students have their own reporting that they can access directly from the portal once they have started their materials. They simply select the report that they want to look at, either study guide or practice tests, what module or report they want to view, and then they're going to be taken to a personalized overview of how long they've spent, any quiz scores or completion scores that they've done. The practice test reports begin with detailed information on their overall score, how long they spent. It will move into an overview of the main core areas. This is the outline of the test plan itself. They can see how they scored in each area and oops, I went too fast. Scrolling down will show the topics they missed at least one question on from that practice test attempt. You have access to this. They have access to this. This is not a real person, by the way, just pretend information, but you have access to some detailed reporting on both your cohort as well as per learner. Now, those students who have a personalized progress tracker, so that's going to be for phlebotomy, medical assisting, pharmacy technician, and patient care technician. The other four we're working on getting here as well, but they currently have a progress tracker that provides an interactive reporting tool to help monitor their process. Answers to the questions of what have I completed? What should I do next? How am I doing in study? Which areas am I struggling in? So we've got lots of great reports and details to help progress them through their learning. Now, I wanted to give you some information as to how doable I truly believe this is. This is a snapshot of a school report that I personally have worked with previously. Each of the bars on this graph represents a different college semester. The first semester was when the school was using NHA's exam, but not using any of our prep materials. This had been their normal testing outcome for a few semesters, and so they reached out to find out what they could possibly do. Well, then they decided to provide the preparation resources to their students, but didn't follow any true implementation practices. They simply gave them materials to study. That next semester, we didn't really see a huge improvement on the pass rate. This was not the outcome that they wanted, so then we worked together with instructors to highlight what these best practices are, truly embedding the materials into their requirements and coursework, initiating timelines and best practices. And then as you can see in this third semester, they obtained a 92% pass rate with those who followed best practices, all passing in that first attempt. We saw an increase in the confidence level because not only did their pass rate increase, but so did their sit rate. The amount of students that felt confident to take the exam doubled during this time. It was a really great success rate. We see this again and again, that when they feel it's possible they can succeed, they reach further and the success rate is higher. So a little bit of information, again, following back to that survey I mentioned earlier, we identified some common themes around the biggest hurdles students felt related to sitting for their NHA exam. I'm going to do another poll here. I'm curious, of those listed, as you can see, these kind of 5 options listed here, what do you think was the most common concern reported by learners prior to testing? What do you think they were most nervous about and most worried about? So go ahead and take a look at these and select the one that you think was the most common hurdle. Take just a minute. I know there's a couple things to read there. Fill that out. Almost everybody. Anybody else want to post it? I think the answer might be pretty clear based off of what we've been discussing so far, but let's go ahead and stop that. There we go. So you're right. Those of you who selected test anxiety, this was the most common issue, and we know it can be addressed with proper preparation. It's one of the many reasons why it's a best practice to get this material to your students as early as realistic. We'll be sending them welcome emails, information on preparing. We really want to help with this confidence issue. Here are just some of the hundreds of comments from that survey that focus not just on uncertainty and anxiety, but not knowing if they were prepared. Have I learned all the things I need? Even worry about making it through a timed exam. So providing the NHA test plans, these learning resources really statistically have shown to make a positive impact. All right, Step 4, as you can see, implementation and involvement can really help student outcomes for that exam. To assist with this, step 4 is making sure that you've checked everything off for exam day itself. Timelines for reminders, setting exam dates, when to ensure your candidates are ready to test. We have some helpful walkthroughs and guides so you can understand which piece of this is when we need them. So we're going to kind of break this down one piece at a time. We're going to take the major players on what we have what's called an exam readiness checklist. It's on your website. We can show you even where to find it. But starting somewhere around when you implement the practice tests, if you follow this typical timeline, that would be, roughly 30 to 45 days prior to your desired exam date. We'd recommend kind of starting this process. Now, I know not all programs are created the same, timelines are different. This is just giving you a rough outline. So around this time, if you're testing at your campus, we would suggest that you schedule your exam date through the NHA website. If you are using prepaid exam codes for your students, ensure that you've connected with your NHA representative so you have those set up for those who are slated to be eligible to test. This is also the right time to ensure that any learner who may qualify for testing accommodations with appropriate documentation and IEP or 504 on file, that they submit that to NHA through a request form for their exam day. They need to have their application already completed prior to submitting this request. So check in with them, be sure it gets reviewed in time. Proctors on exam day do not have the authority to approve accommodations independently. These must be completed in advance. To ensure that everything is ready for exam day, this is also when we would suggest that students begin to submit their exam applications. Either way, all applications must be completed prior to the exam deadline, which is 1 week before the test. You can monitor these through your administrative login in the NHA portal. In fact, we recommend you keep an eye on those to ensure that everyone who should has finished this step. So then in the kind of 2-week window before the exam, students should be submitted or have already completed those applications, which you should definitely be monitoring through your login to ensure there are no surprises on that final exam roster. Check in with those who might need that additional accommodation request. If they need a different exam date opened to move to or additional documentation to submit, this needs to happen at this point. Confirm with the testing area that you have a proctor ready, the testing space is set up, if they'll need additional assistance to be prepared for the test to run. Remember, you can't proctor your own students, so you want to be sure someone is set up who can. For any offsite or third-party tests, this is the time when you want to be sure that they're scheduled and have all the resources they need for that testing method. During the final week prior to the exam is when we would suggest you implement that last practice test, providing students that real exam experience, solidifying their confidence. You may receive an email to approve an exam roster. For any students testing off-site, you might not get that notification, but you should be monitoring those off-site rosters at this time as well, confirming that the tests have been scheduled and are ready to go. Provide any final reminders to your students, including anyone with an accommodation. Review with them the test plan, their exam location, date, time, with suggestions to plan ahead for parking, traffic. This is also when you should remind students to check their logins and passwords. They will be on a different device than when they've been studying with, so it won't have any saved logins, and it'd be difficult, it's not always possible to reset a password during an exam. So this is the right time to remind them to have their best login, email, and everything ready to go. Finally, we'll come to exam day, where your learners can become NHA certified. Okay, so that readiness checklist covers the idea of monitoring your applications, exam dates, and rosters. But step 5 is knowing how, and to be sure that you're actively keeping watch. One of the most common and most frustrating scenarios is when on exam day, emotions and anxiety are already high and something goes wrong that could have been avoided. So let's take a look at how to be sure that we implement that checklist through your portal. So when scheduling on-site exams, always check your test dates that exist first, which you can do through the upcoming exams button on your NHA portal. Consider this your exam calendar. From this link, you can view any upcoming exams in the next 30 to 90 days. In this example, you can see that exam tests are open. If your test date isn't here, then you know you won't be duplicating anything to add one. The exam status is important, as you can see those open for registration or closed for registration. That application deadline I mentioned, this is the last day students can apply for the exam, 1 week prior to the test date. It's important that they're on the exam roster before this date. NHA will automatically finalize the exam 3 business days before the test date. So knowing that registration deadline, ensuring your learners are registered beforehand is key to a smooth exam experience. So that left-hand navigation bar is where you can access all of the information you need to prevent any surprises on your exam roster. This is where you can be monitoring your students through the View Exam Applications feature. Here you can see both off-site or on-site applications, their exam statuses, even completion dates based off of whatever filters you've set. You can also download this into an Excel spreadsheet or PDF for easier viewing, saving, filtering as you need. The week before the exam is when you may receive notification of the exam roster to approve for any on-site tests. Now, please follow up with your internal process to be sure you know who should be approving exam rosters. Rostering is a little bit different for those testing off-site, but the steps to review the roster is the same for both. So you want to go through your roster when you receive that notification to confirm those who are eligible to test. From here, you select your test date and you can approve or reject your students as needed. So this is where you can select the test date that you need to view and open the test that you need, and you'll be able to select the students on the left-hand side. And this will activate the option to approve or reject. Now, it's important that you're sure to do this as soon as you can to ensure that it is complete before that 3 business days before the test, because NHA will finalize anybody on that roster at that time. Once this is done, no changes can be made to invoices, no more students can be added to the test. So take note that the default setting for this page for those testing on-site are pending approval. If you don't see your student here, double check that your filter in the upper right-hand corner is set correctly. The default for off-site exams is all students. So if you just want to see those pending approval, you can update your filter. So the final step is to be sure you know where to go for all of your resources. And this starts with understanding the NHA test plan, which I've mentioned several times. The test plan is the blueprint or outline of the exam itself. We highly recommend you provide this to your students, but it's also possibly a checklist for readiness. It's important to know how your students will be scored on the high stakes exam. In our preparation tools, the practice tests give you and your students a straight accuracy percentage across exam competencies, but the certification test evaluates each question across what's called a scaled score, which we're going to review a little bit. But exams are developed with a full job task analysis. This includes subject matter experts, industry practitioners, several rounds of committee evaluation. So this, along with our governing board and meeting accreditation standards, help us to create the test plans and test questions. And all of these are listed on our website, ready for anyone to view. And they're tied to each certification itself. Just select the certification type and you can download the free test plan. So once we've launched a test after it's been developed, then our psychometrician team processes these questions and evaluates them. So every person who tests will follow the same blueprint. It's what all of our materials are based on. These scored items on the exam outline are a series of competencies and tasks that will be on the exam itself. Though every person who challenges this test will follow the same test plan, not everyone may have the same questions. So to fairly score each individual candidate across a variety set of questions, each one has been evaluated through a series of layers that include how hard is this question, how often might you be asked to do this in your role, or even how important is it that you get it right the first time. These are just some layers used to establish that cut score, that scaled score. So to provide a fair assessment, any exam has a maximum score of 500. No matter what questions you may receive, every candidate has the potential to earn 500 points. Now, there will be questions on the exam we don't score, and learners want to be sure to answer all questions to the best of their ability. The non-scored questions are not included in the test blueprint, only those scored. So the minimum passing score for our test is 390 or higher. So getting a 389 doesn't necessarily mean they missed one question, but that they didn't make the cut score. Now, again, these are not broken into standard measures of getting an A 90%, B 80% grade on a percentage. They evaluate each learner uniquely across weighted questions. As a side note, we find that certain benchmarks may actually discourage students from testing. Milestones that may be set for students to hit certain scores throughout the semester may not be realistic for every candidate and actually discourage them from even trying in the first place. Our goal is to make sure that any student in your class has the potential to reach their goal and earn their industry credential. So we'd recommend, rather than using a given quiz or test score as a requirement to test, focus more on the time in learning, using the reports and assessments to monitor growth over that journey. And that is where the implementation guides can definitely help to understand what those benchmarks could be. You monitor your students in a unique and special group, being able to know them and observe their individual growth. Practice tests provide you clear and specific percentages of accuracy to help understand how they're doing and how they've grown over your process. NHA certification scores are designed to compare your learners across a much larger group, the entire country. So the cut scores don't reflect the same kind of scoring that practice tests do. We're gauging their readiness to move into these roles using those scaled scores to define the ability to step into the field and showcase their skills work day one. So benchmarks on practice tests won't necessarily reflect the same level of readiness due to these differences in scoring. Okay, I lied. One last bonus tip, and then we'll get to Q&A, and that's encouragement. As you and your students work through your educational timeline, your involvement in this process and encouragement is vital. For so many of your students, this may be the first time they've done anything of this magnitude, and they may not fully believe that they can. As I mentioned earlier, setting those benchmarks may not necessarily be the best way to help. Milestones set for study and preparation are a more realistic option for every candidate. Our goal is that any student in your class has the potential to earn their industry credential and become NHA certified, and their belief in that ability is immediately tied to you, who we know are the real heroes here. I want to just take a minute and just thank you all for all that you're doing and for being here with us today. We know how hard you work. Not to mention with everything that's been going on the last few years, we know that you are really, really the people putting themselves out there, and we're so thankful for you. So thank you again for being here. To help a little bit further, we just wanted to talk a little bit about that, a couple of the resources that are out there. And one of them we mentioned already is that flashcard app. Really help to encourage your learners to use that. That form we're going to post here in just a minute helps us to understand you, your needs, when you need them. Remember, filling out the survey for the webinar and the instructor form will put you into 2 different raffles. We're really excited about that. Also, keep your eyes on upcoming events, future notifications for our webinar series for 2023, for other resources coming out. And just know that we are here as we continue to develop the full learning track. We have program resources that range from didactic learning and MedTerm and AMP, essential soft skills development, clinical skills for medical assistants, administrative assistants, pharmacy technicians. These can be used across the entire journey and be packaged together to provide a comprehensive experience from start to finish. Okay, so that was a lot of information. I know. Thank you all so much for being here. Just for our own clarity on the kinds of things you might want to learn more about. If you do need any additional training or would like further webinars, take a minute to just identify from here if there is anything that you want someone to follow up with you directly on. That webinar form that Lauren just posted in the chat box. Thank you, Lauren. That $500 gift card form. Post it there, what you might be interested in, or if you'd like some one-on-one follow-ups, someone will connect with you as soon as possible. So just take a quick minute. This is more for me so we can understand how we can continue to add information or make new webinars out there. What are the kinds of things you're really interested in learning about? Just give you a second to fill that out. Open up those survey links. You have them on your browser. You can fill them out right away. All right, thank you all so much. I'm gonna go ahead and close that poll down. We'll get to some open Q&A here in just a second. All right. So again, before we get there, I wanted to reiterate, we have been recording this session. Anyone who registered for today will receive a link of that recording. We'll be capturing the questions you've been posting. We're gonna do some open Q&A, and Lauren has just posted those survey links for you to fill out. We do want you to be able to address your questions when they happen. So you do have accessible how-to resources right from your home screen of your website. These self-guided resources from your dashboard, you can get directly to. We can connect with test plans, resources, how-to documents, all right here, including a library of resources that can take you right in to every tool that exists to help. So how-to documents and resources. We also, of course, have our client care team. They are the live chat, our help center phone line. Though available extended hours, they're not 24 hours, but they're an incredible group of people, willing and excited to answer your questions. And then, of course, your client executive, your personal NHA contact. They're here to help with all the other tools, ordering, processes, updating resources, adding new tools, viewing what's out there. They're here to help. And if you would like additional training, one-on-one with someone from our team, you would want to reach out to your personal contact, let them know, and then they'll connect you with one of us. So that's kind of the resources that are out there. All right. So I wanted to go ahead and open it up. I know I've been yapping at you for quite a while now. So I would love to find out if there have been any common questions in the Q&A, or if anybody does have an open question, we'd be happy to, raise your hand, type it in the chat box or the Q&A, and let's get those answered.
Laura, there was one question that came up early on in the presentation, and I had an instructor looking for some kind of certificate of participation to use towards their professional development in teaching and learning. Is there something that they get with their webinar recording that they can utilize?
That's a great question. So as of right now, with the webinar itself, we do not yet have a resource that is quite like that. However, for any one-on-one training that you do with someone from our team, you do in fact get a printable certificate of your time. Now, if that's something that you uniquely need or are required to do, go ahead and post that in the Q&A. I really need to have this, and we'll be able to send you a different survey link that you can use that will give you that documentation, but it is going to ask you your opinion about how we're doing and what we're doing. But you can also identify, the documentation you usually need for that is how much time did you spend? What was the content that we covered? We would be more than happy to send you a blueprint or outline, or even if you really needed a PDF copy of the presentation today with how much time it took, just let us know what you need and we'll try to do everything we can to get that for you. So that's a great question.
Thank you. That is the only question that I had. So I think everybody was listening so intently on every word that you said so that they could best help their students. So
okay. All right. Well, anyone who's with us here, there's any, okay, professional certificate. Angela, thank you for posting that. We'll capture anybody who needs that, just post that. And after we're done here today, I'll send out a direct email just to you with some resources to see if that will suffice, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so go ahead. Anybody does that, perfect. Let us know what you need. We'll print it up and you'll get it in an email, because usually better if it comes from somebody else. You can't just make it yourself. So happy to do that. You'll also will be receiving the follow-up email for attending that will have the recording in it. So those are some additional resources too. other than documentation of your time today, are there any other questions that are out there while you've got us on the line? If not, totally fine. I appreciate that. We want to thank you all so much for being here today. Please take a look at our future webinar series. We're going to be posting the November dates coming up soon. We have a few more of these, also webinars for your students. Those are available for those of you who want to see that out on our website. Again, under that resources dropdown, you can learn more about the NHA mobile app, our job board, resource center, and the upcoming events. So even if you wanted to, and I'm just going to show you here, we have the webinars for you as administrators, but also sessions for students. We even have one just tonight that we're hosting for students. So you can see here we've got a couple still for October. We're going to have some more in November, even a few in December, and then we'll launch our new series sometime in early 2023. So you can see we've got webinars for them to register for you to attend. Please join us anytime through that upcoming events where you can register with us. So thank you all so much for your time. Have a wonderful day, and good luck, I guess, right?
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you guys. Have a wonderful day.
All righty, bye-bye.